Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirala Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Parshas Chaye Sara, Sicha Alef. And the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha, we learn the pasuk of Yitin li es ma'aras hamachpelah gomer bekesef molei yitnen li, and we learn the Rashi on the words bekesef molei. And there are three parts in the Sicha. The Rebbe will, number one, ask 4 questions on Rashi. In the process, the Rebbe is going to negate an answer on the first 2 questions. Number 2, present the key to answering Rashi, and then answer all 4 questions. And number 3, present both the Inyanim Mufloim and the Yena Shel Torah in Rashi. On the pasuk, where Avram said to the Bnei Ches, "V'yitin li es ma'aras hamachpelah gomer," that Ephron should give him the ma'aras hamachpelah, bekesef molei yitnen li, and that he should give it to him with kesef molei. So Rashi explains, he quotes the words bekesef molei, and he says, "Ashalim kol shavya," I'll pay its whole value. And then he continues, "V'chein David Amar la'aravna," and so did David say to Aravna when he wanted to buy the area of the Geirin, of the threshing floor, to build a mizbeach there. He also told him that he will buy it bekesef molei. And there are 4 questions here. The first question is, what is Rashi teaching by explaining that the words bekesef molei mean kol shavya? This seems to be the simple meaning of the pasuk. So what is Rashi teaching us here? The second question is, what is the proof from kesef molei by David HaMelech, since it's the very same lashon as in our pasuk? How is that a proof? What it means over here, it basically uses the same exact words. So how is it a proof? L'cha'era, in order to answer these 2 questions, we could explain that the intent of Rashi over here is to bring a proof and a chaver, another place where we find the word molei being used by kesef. Because there's a difficulty over here, which is how to use the word molei in regards to kesef. It would seem that you could only use the word molei by something where you could also use by it the opposite of the word molei. The opposite of molei, full, is reik, empty. Like, for example, by a container, it could be full or empty. However, when it comes to money, it would be more fitting to use the words chaser and shalem, because the coin is whole or it's missing, because in those days, every coin was different. So if it was missing a part of the coin or it was a whole coin, or you could say it's a lot or a little, that you could use by money. But you can't use the word molei. And therefore Rashi is telling us that he finds another place where we see the word molei being used by kesef, by money. V'chein David Omer la'aravna bekesef molei. So he's doing it in order to prove that it's the way of the pasuk, also by kesef, by money, to use the terminology molei instead of shalem. The pasuk will use the word molei instead. So maybe that's what Rashi is coming to tell us over here. However, according to that, it's not understood. If so, number 1, then Rashi should have said v'chein bid David, like he says elsewhere, actually in last week's parsha, v'chein b'yoina. It shouldn't say v'chein David Amar la'aravna, v'chein bid David, also by David. It also says over there bekesef molei. And the second difficulty is, then he should have just brought the proof and not the explanation. Rashi should have said bekesef molei. He should have quoted the words bekesef molei and then say v'chein bid David, and also by David it says bekesef molei. Why does Rashi tell us the meaning of the words, that there are shalim kol shavya? That part is obvious to us. The third question is, since Rashi is quoting the words bekesef molei from the pasuk, that means that those are the words that he's explaining. So if that's the case, he should have just said, what's bekesef molei? Kol shavya, the whole value. Why does he add the word ashalim? What is he adding? Ashalim kol shavya. He's coming to explain what bekesef molei is. Kesef molei means kol shavya, the whole value. And the fourth question is, what's the arichus? What's the lengthiness of Rashi writing V'chein David Amar la'aravno bekesef mole? Why does Rashi add the words over here Amar la'aravno? He should have just said, as he does in a number of places, V'chein b'David, and so too by David, we find that it's written bekesef mole. So we're going to move straight into the answer, and we're going to begin with the main point of the answer and answering questions number 1 and number 3. At first glance, bekesef mole seems to mean that mole refers to the kesef. That what type of kesef is it? It's kesef mole, meaning that Avram is informing them that the coins will be full in terms of their weight. Or similar to what the Yerushalmi says, that it means kintarin, big coins. So Avram was telling them what type of kesef is it going to be? It's kesef mole. So that's how we would have understood the pasuk without Rashi. And this is what Rashi is coming to negate with his teaching of Ashalim Kol Shavya, that the word mole doesn't refer to and isn't a description of the kesef itself, whether it's the amount or the weight of the kesef, but rather refers to the field and the full mole sale. It's referring to the field and the sale of the field, that it should be a full sale. Avram said bekesef mole, meaning a shalim kol shavya of the field. When he's saying bekesef mole, he's referring mole in terms of the sale being a complete sale, that is going to pay the full price of the field, and not that the kesef will be mole. And what's the reason Rashi explains it this way, and not bekesef mole, that the kesef is mole? We said that's what it seems to mean at first glance. And Rashi is compelled to explain it this way because when the discussion in the psukim, when we look at the psukim in their totality, so it's understood that in the request of Avram, of the Bnei Ches, when he said that v'yitin lias maras machpelah gamer bekesef mole yitnen li, so when we look beforehand, we could see that he's coming to negate what the Bnei Ches told him before, which was that Nesi Elikim Ata B'Sechenu, you're a great person among us, B'Mivchar Kvarenu Kvar Gamer, and you could pick the choicest of the places to bury Sarah. Lo Yichla Mimcha Gamer, it's not going to be withheld from you. Meaning, what were they telling Avram? That he should take the Maras HaMachpelah for free without paying its price. And Avram over here is responding, so it has to be that he's responding to their offer. And Avram responded to this that he doesn't agree, but rather bekesef mole, he's saying that he'll pay kol shavya the full price. So that's what Rashi is teaching us over here, that it's not, mole is not referring to the kesef, but rather mole is referring to the sale, that it'll be a full sale. So that answers the first question we had, that what's Rashi teaching us here. Regarding the third question, why does Rashi add the word ashalim? So this is why Rashi doesn't just write kol shavya, but rather also adds the word ashalim, which is the opposite of it being a free gift. Rashi is saying ashalim, I will pay, and no, I won't take it for free. Because with this, by adding the word ashalim, he's explaining the proof for his explanation. The proof is because they said free, and Avram's response has to be, no, not for free, I'm going to pay. So what's his response? Bekesef mole, I'm going to pay. So mole must refer that he's going to pay for the field. So that's where Rashi writes the word over here, ashalim, to tell us that's his proof. His proof is that Avram is saying, I'm going to pay. So if he's saying, I'm going to pay, and he's responding that he's going to pay, then it must be that when he says bekesef mole, he's saying, I'm going to pay for the full price of the field and not take it for free. The offer is for free. He's responding, no, bekesef mole. That means bekesef mole is referring to the sale, that it's going to be a full sale, and he's not going to take it for free. Now we're going to move on to answer questions 2 and 4, which asked about the proof that Rashi brings. V'chein David, we asked what's the proof, and also why does Rashi write it at length by adding the words Amar la Ravna? Why didn't he just say V'chein b'David? It says bekesef mole. So the explanation for that is because nevertheless, even though we explained that kesef mole is a response to getting it for free, and so therefore it has to mean not for free, but rather ashalim kol shavya, I'll pay the whole value. But nevertheless, we can still be doichik, we could push and squeeze and say and explain that mole refers to the kesef. Like we said originally, that's what at first glance it seems to mean, that the kesef is mole, it's whole, whether it means the coins are whole or that they're better coins. And even though then the response of Avram doesn't fit with the words of the Bnei Ches, because he's not clearly addressing their offer to give it for free. So then you have that difficulty. They offered for free and Avram doesn't even respond to that. He's rather telling them what type of coins he's going to use. But nevertheless, we can be doichik and say that with Avram saying Bekesef Mole, talking about what type of coins he's going to use, meaning that he'll give them either full coins or big coins, it automatically includes his refusal to accept the field for free. So even though it's a doichik, because they offer to give it for free, and Avram is not responding directly to that offer, but nevertheless, we could say it's included in his response, even though he's telling them what type of coins he's going to use, and not that he wants to pay for it and not get it for free, but if he's talking about the coins he's going to use, that means he's saying he doesn't want it for free. So even though it's a doichik, because he's not addressing it clearly, but we can say that. So because of this, so therefore, in order to completely negate this explanation, that kesef male, the word male refers to the kesef, so Rashi adds, v'chein David Amar la'aravna bekesef male. That's the reason Rashi brings these words, to negate the doichik of saying that male refers to the kesef. Rashi's intent over here isn't to bring another place where it says bekesef male, but rather to strengthen his explanation that bekesef male means ashalim. It means I will pay, and it comes to negate a free gift. How does it help to bring the story from David? The reason David wanted to pay Aravna, he wanted to pay him for the geirin, for the threshing floor over there, with kesef male, is said clearly. Over there it says it clearly. It's David said to Aravna, Ki lo esa asher lecha la'Hashem, I don't want to take what's from you and give that to Hashem, and over there bring karbanis, va'alis oila chinam, and bring an oila chinam for free without paying. So clearly, the words bekesef male are the opposite of va'alis oila chinam. He explained, I want to do bekesef male and not chinam. So from there we see that kesef male, that the word male is referring to paying and not getting it for free. And that's why Rashi writes at length. It doesn't just say v'chein David, v'chein beDavid bekesef male. He adds v'chein David Amar la'aravna, because he's trying to tell us to refer to the inyan. We have to look at the discussion there. The proof is from the discussion. That's his proof. So because that's his proof, that's why he adds the words Amar la'aravna. It's from looking at the conversation that occurred over there that then we're able to see that the word male from bekesef male comes to say that he's going to pay for it. Because just like there, it has to mean that he's going to pay. Because it says that he wants to do bekesef male and not chinam. So to over here, when he said bekesef male, it must be that he's responding to their offer to take it chinam for free. And he's saying, no, bekesef male, ashalim, I'm going to pay kol shavia, the whole value. At this point, we already answered all 4 questions, and now we're going to move on to add something more to what we said about the 4th question, where we asked, why does Rashi add the words Amar la'aravna? So we can also say another thing regarding the reason for the lengthiness in Rashi of writing v'chein David Amar la'aravna, which based on this explanation, it makes it understood why Rashi uses these words to indicate that he's referring to the whole inyan there. We explained that Rashi adds the words Amar la'aravna to tell us to look at the whole inyan, the whole discussion over there. But you can ask, why does Rashi use these words to say that idea? Why don't he do it in some other way? According to the explanation we're going to give about what we can learn from these words, it'll now make it sit really well that Rashi chose these words to communicate his main point, which is that we're referring to the whole inyan over there. What else can we say about these extra words in Rashi, about Amar la'aravna? So one can ask, what's the reason Avram specifically wanted to buy the field with kesef male? If, as Rashi tells us, he could have taken it min adin, he could have taken it according to the law, he could have rightfully taken it. Sha'amar li HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because Hashem told Avram, that's what Avram told them. I could take it min adin, because Hashem told me, I'm going to give this land to your offspring. And Rashi answers this by saying that David Amar la'aravna bekesef male. David said to Aravna bekesef male, that he wants to pay the full price. And from there, when we look over there, and we see what happened over there, we'll understand to hear why Avram did the same thing and wanted to pay for it. So over there, David HaMelech conquered Yerushalayim from Aravna HaMelech. And so, through conquering, he took ownership of Yerushalayim because of Din Kibush. That's how it works. If one king conquers a land from another king, it becomes his property. He owns the land. And nevertheless, when David HaMelech wanted to build a Mizbeach on the land, he didn't suffice with the ownership through Kibush. that he conquered the land, and not even with Aravna offering to give it to him as a gift. He declined taking the gift, but rather he wanted to gain ownership through purchasing it bekesef male. And we look over there, we see David gives an explanation for why he wants to pay bekesef male. And David gave the reason for this. He said, "Keloi esa asher lecha laHashem va'alis oilachinam." I don't want to use what's yours for when I serve Hashem and bring up an oilah for free without paying. Meaning, what is David saying over here? If David would take it only because it's his midin kibush, then it still doesn't entirely negate the connection that Aravna has to it. Because David said, Ki loy esa asher lecha, otherwise it'll be lecha. And even more so, even if Aravna gives it to him as a gift, where by giving it as a gift, he also gives him this small connection that he has with it, even after the kibush, the conquering, nevertheless, it still remains asher lecha. It's still Aravna's. Doesn't explain the Sicha exactly how it is. Maybe it's because he gave the gift, so there's some type of connection to him. He's the one that gave it as a gift. So it still remains Asher Lecha, that Aravna still has some connection and rights to it. And therefore David paid Bekesef Male the full value in order to remove all the rights of Aravna to the place, so that it doesn't have any attachment or connection to the Mizbeach and the Karbanis. And similarly, we could learn over here, it's by Avram. He didn't want that the place where he was going to bury Sarah, and also he and the other Avis and Emmaus would be buried there. He didn't want that place to have in it any connection to Ephron. And in a way that his name is on it, that there's some type of association. It's called the place of burial that's associated with Ephron. And therefore, he refused to take it minadin, and even not as a gift, but rather he paid its full price. So that's why Rashi says, V'chein David Amar la'Aravna. You have to see what David said to Aravna. Let's look at the words. He emphasized that I want to pay for it. Why? So it shouldn't be lecha. It shouldn't be yours. It should be something which doesn't have any association or attachment to Aravna. So to over here, Avram didn't want it to be Ephron's. It should be something that has no attachment and association to Ephron. Now we're going to move on to the Inyanim Muflayim and then to the Yeno Shel Torah in Rashi. In Pirush Rashi, there are Inyanim Muflayim that also relate to other halakim of the Torah. Like we know in the Torah, there's Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Seid, and there are Inyanim Muflayim in Rashi on the Torah that also relate to other halakim of the Torah. Through this teaching of Rashi, a question in the Chelek, in the section of Allah, is answered. The din that land is able to be purchased with money, that through money there comes an exchange of ownership by land, is learned in Gemara from the pasuk of Sadis Bakesef Yiknu. Sadis fields Bakesef Yiknu, they purchase with money. And Taisus explains, the reason we don't learn it out from the pasuk that's written by Ephron, that Avram purchased land from Ephron with money, the reason is Mishum de Dilma Hani Mili Menachri, because maybe, perhaps, that's the case when it's being purchased from a guy, Shekol Kinyone Bekesef, that his whole ability to exchange ownership is through money. So maybe that's where money is effective, but not necessarily by a Yid. But according to the above, it's understood very simply why we don't learn this din from the psukim regarding Ephron. Because besides for the fact that we wouldn't learn from here the main din of Kinyan Kesef by land, what is Kinyan Kesef? Kinyan Kesef means that a transaction takes effect when through money on the ownership of the land, which would mean even when it's bought with the value of a pruta, even when it's worth a lot more. Kinyan Kesef means that money has the ability to create a transaction, an exchange of ownership, which would mean that any money that's exchanged would affect that change of ownership, and a person can buy a valuable piece of land even for a pruta. We wouldn't learn that from here because Avram paid the full amount. Because Avram bought the field, Bekesef Male, a Shalom Kol Shavya. So except for this point, that we wouldn't learn out the kinyan of kesef, that money affects the transaction even if the money does not equal the value of the land. In addition to this that Avram gave the money for the field, it wasn't in order to acquire it, because he could have just taken it minadin. He wasn't doing it in order to acquire and get ownership. So we can't learn about kinyan. But rather, the reason Avram did it is in order that Ephron shouldn't have any connection, even though that it's not his at all. He wanted to affect that there shouldn't be any connection to the field. So it didn't change, and it wasn't addressing the ownership part. The ownership Avram already had. Avram wanted to affect that there should be no connection. And therefore it's understood that we can't learn from here, kinyan kesef by land, because it had nothing to do with affecting the kinyan, the ownership. It was there in order to affect that there shouldn't be any connection. And so we can't learn from there that money can be used for as a kinyan by karka, by land. From the Yenishal Torah and Rashi, it says in the Zohar that the mitzvahs need to be not in Reikanyo of a Magana, not on something which is empty and free, because then, if the mitzvah is done in Reikanyo of a Magana, one doesn't draw down through the mitzvah the Rucha de Kutsha. That, the way of Reikanyo of a Magana, is the Seder in the Umazeh, in Mitzrayim. Like it says, Asher Noichel b'Mitzrayim, Chinam, it's free. So the Zohar says that the mitzvahs need to be not in Reikanyo uva Magana, but rather one needs lishtadala be'kidekayos kufum chele. A person has to exert themselves properly according to their ability and ba'agar shlim. And they are from this in the avodah ruchnis of each and every yid, that their inyan, the inyan of a yid, is to be mevarer, mezakech, to refine and uplift through their avodah and Torah mitzvahs the place that they are found in, and the person should do it in such a way that they alone should be the balabayas there. It should be a place of Kedusha, that the Kavanah is that it should be connected to them. The place should be acquired to them through paying and avodah and effort, and not in Reikanyo uva Magana. That a person, what we're saying over here is that a person shouldn't say to themselves, since I'm naturally talented, and the Torah was given to me as a gift. The Torah is a gift to all Yidden. And it's also easy for me to fulfill the mitzvahs. By Torah, the person's talented and they got it as a gift. And by mitzvahs, it's easy for the person to fulfill the mitzvahs, because that this person's nefesh Bahamas and Yetzer Hara don't conceal very much. And so the whole inyan of Avodah and Yagia is not for me. A person shouldn't say this. And for this comes the Eirah from our Rashi. For this and to this comes the Eirah from Avram and David, that they didn't want to acquire for free even the portion, the Chelek, that they deserved and that they could have easily taken, but rather they paid its full value for it. Meaning to say that even someone that could learn Torah and do mitzvahs without any effort and exertion, without any avodah, nevertheless, in order to refine their part in the world, that it should completely leave the memshala, the control of Klippa, and it should be a dira lo yizbarach, is specifically through hishtadlus, through exerting oneself, avodah and yigiyah. Just like we see that in order to take the land from Ephron and from Aravna, it had to be through not taking it just because of ownership, because it could be taken, but to exert and to pay for it. And through this, one reaches Arbamei Shekel Kesef Overla Seicher, the 400 worlds. Refers to the 400 worlds. The Yarsi Tzadikaya La'alma Da'asi, that Tzadikim will inherit in the next world, which is the revelation of Seviv Kol Almin, and it's for all Yidden, because it says the Yarsi Tzadikaya, and Va'amich Kulam Tzadikim, all the Yidden are Tzadikim.